All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is the November 13th regularly scheduled meeting of the Atlanta City Council's Finance and Executive Committee. I'm Howard Shook, Chair. Alex Swan is Vice Chair to my right. We have Jason Winston to my left, your right, and Ms. Collier Overstreet is to the far left. So the four of us constitute a quorum. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I will make a motion that we adopt the agenda with one item added, second by Mr. Wan. Let's open that vote.
Vote is open.
All right, the agenda's been adopted with the addition of the one item. You've all committed the minutes of the prior meeting to memory. I will move their approval. Second. Second by Mr. Wan. Let's open that vote.
Vote is open.
All right, the minutes have been approved. That takes us to public comment, and we do have several people signed up to speak. First of whom is Carrie Mackey, followed by Denise Wade. Hello.
On? Okay.
Yep.
Hello. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Carrie Mackey. I serve as an associate director for the Carter Center's Rule of Law program. I have lived in the city of Atlanta for 22 years, and I'm here again in support of PAD and to urge the city to continue funding PAD. I also want to focus on opportunity. PAD was created here in Atlanta, Atlanta born and bred for the community, by the community. For nearly a decade, PAD has helped individuals diverted to them by the police. And during the past 4 years, PAD has responded to community referrals via 311, a unique and innovative model that places Atlanta front and center in a growing national movement to change the narrative from criminalizing and jailing our neighbors in crisis to providing them with the services and support they need and deserve to drive their own change and become active members in our community. Atlanta supports PAD. We as community members know that PAD's work requires trust building, showing up day in and day out to help our neighbors in need of services and support with dignity, care, and respect. PAD's community response team knows Atlanta and how best to support these individuals in crisis. As such, the Carter Center is here, continuing to support PAD in increasing data collection, use, and reporting. We also are helping with outreach campaigns to ensure that more community members are aware of and using PAD, especially in districts where use of PAD may be lower due to a lack of awareness. You all have an important opportunity to continue pointing Atlanta's moral compass towards real change, to continue placing Atlanta among those cities reimagining community safety and wellness, to continue giving more of your constituents the opportunity to transform their lives. We don't need to scrap this work or start from scratch. We have a proven, trusted, community-driven provider of these services in PAD. I hope you take advantage of this opportunity. Atlanta influences everything, and the nation is watching. Thank you.
Thank you. Denise Wade, followed by Devin Franklin, followed by Blake Feldman.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Denise Wade. I am a person with lived experience of homelessness, mental health challenges, and have over 15 years free from active addiction. I currently serve as a senior program associate at the Carter Center's Rule of Law program and also am a resident of District 4. I'm coming to you all today to implore that you please move ahead with the contract that PAD applied to the RFP for and was awarded on July 26th of this year. As a former project manager for homeless outreach for Partners for Home, I witness daily the impact of extreme poverty and mental health challenges that our neighbors have. Because there are not appropriate systems in place to provide care for all of these people, PAD has been filling a gap to get people the care they need and make sure they are not criminalized in the process. As a doctorate of public health candidate at Georgia State, I understand all too well the brokenness of our systems and why the work of PAD is vital to the most vulnerable in our city. And it is these people who will suffer the most if the contract is not awarded. PAD didn't show up overnight to do this work. It took years of strategizing, planning, and community relationship building for PAD to become the organization it is and fulfill the role it plays in our city. Knowing the landscape in Atlanta from my previous work, I can testify that no other organization is equipped to do the work that PAD does. and now in my role at the Carter Center, working on a project to support PAD. I have learned PAD is a national leader in community response work. With my Carter Center, Fulton County, and PAD colleagues, I attended an international conference 2 weeks ago in Seattle, where a panel workshop on PAD's alternative response work was the main focus. The workshop was standing room only, and there was a line of people waiting to learn how to replicate their success afterwards. PAD has established a reputation on the streets that people can trust and believe in. It is important that PAD is able to do this work to provide continuity of care for those on the streets. Please don't let down the most vulnerable in our city that PAD serves the most. Thank you.
Thank you. Devin Franklin, and then Blake Feldman.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
My name is Devin Franklin, and I am Senior Movement Policy Counsel with the Southern Center for Human Rights here in Atlanta, Georgia. We are a nonprofit law firm working towards the decriminalization of race and poverty in the Deep South, and particularly here in Atlanta. And we're familiar with one another. Not that I ever am, but today I would like to be abundantly clear that I'm not here to mince words or to otherwise equivocate about what I'm here to implore you to do today. And that is to end the stalling of the legislation 240-1474, which authorizes the funding for the Policing Alternatives and Diversions Initiative, better known as PAD, and their contract to provide mobile referral and diversion services here in Atlanta. To remind you all, as well as the honorable public who are watching today, PAD has been the only agency to handle emergency diversion in Atlanta for more than a decade. It is an organization that was originally imagined and developed by community members who understood the need to resist the old hat tactics of incarceration as a salve to social ills, and to reject the scarlet lettering of our neighbors most in need of the kind of help and intervention that cannot be found through cuffs. Contrary to what one council member said last week, we are not here because PAD was the sole source contractor for too long. Instead, we are here because they participated in a competitive bidding process, and now legal process is being subverted for reasons that have nothing to do with the public's best interest. What the public should know is that in April of this year, the city released an RFP for mobile services. PAD applied for that. They were vetted for that. They won that contract. They were awarded that contract in a letter on June 26, and they were determined to be the most qualified applicant. Since being informed of that award, we have watched the formalization of their funding be delayed. Through open records requests that we have, we saw that seemingly innocent delays resulting from confusion related to simply assigning an account number to the contract award was initially the thing, but we have since seen those attacks turn more sinister. In the past few months, I have seen PAD's legacy attacked by council members during Human Resource Committee hearings, and on September 24th, that have nothing to do with PAD's work, and they were not present to speak up for or defend themselves. I have watched the well-established codified funding processes be delayed and ignored, and most recently, and in some, I have seen the deliberate politicizing of public safety in Atlanta. On October 30th, we learned that the city launched a secret special procurement process that effectively subverted and undermines the lawful award to PAD. And not only was the launch of the special procurement secret, it was apparently intentionally an invitation-only process. As when PAD inquired about more information on the procurement process, the city refused to provide additional information. My comrade, Mr. Feldman, will speak to details of the inappropriateness of the special procurement process. But as someone who has attempted to work with this body several times before, I can say that the lack of transparency under this mayor's administration and the exclusivity and selective manner deciding who gets to participate in government has become a defining stain on this iteration of local government. And perhaps that is because you all feel ultimately the sword does not fall on you. But let me be clear.
All right, Mr. Feldman, yeah, you need to wrap it up.
Now that this body in this room today cannot hide behind silence or some doe-eyed attempt of unawareness, your silence in the face of falsehood and your inaction in response to injustice is a tangible adoption of the politicizing of PAD and this mayor's ill-conceived preferences.
All right, thank you. Blake Feldman is next.
Documentation for you all as well.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Blake Feldman, and I'm Senior Policy Counsel at the Southern Center for Human Rights. Prior to joining the Southern Center pretty recently, I was Policy Counsel and Staff Attorney with the Mississippi Center for Justice, and prior to that, I worked with the Southern Poverty Law Center and the ACLU of Mississippi. And a long time ago, I went to law school in Georgia, and I'm excited to be back in the state and in this city. After learning that the CPO had initiated special procurement for diversion services, and shortly thereafter learning that PAD had not been invited to participate, we filed a records request for the procurement file. When the city produced records responsive to our request, I was eager to review them to better understand the administration's basis for initiating the closed procurement process and whether PAD's future was actually in question. I want to briefly discuss 3 requirements of Code Section 2-1191.1. First, there's got to be an unusual or unique situation. Secondly, it's got to be as competitive as is practicable. Finally, the City Council serves as the check and balance. Special procurement, rather than competitive sealed bidding and proposals, is only permitted when the CPO determines that an unusual or unique situation exists, and the CPO is required to include a written determination of the basis for the procurement, the unusual or unique situation, in the contract file. I cannot understand how the opening of the diversion center could be the kind of unique or unusual situation contemplated by the law when the creation, design, and opening of the diversion center is the result of a long contemplated and coordinated effort between the City of Atlanta, Fulton County, and community health partners, including PAD. In fact, the scope of work in the RFP underlying PAD's contract explicitly contemplates the opening of the diversion center and how PAD's work plan would change upon its opening. This squarely contradicts the notion that the diversion center presents unique and unusual circumstances. Unfortunately, the records produced in response to our records request do nothing to illuminate the situation. Although we requested the complete file, a statement laying out the basis for the special procurement process was not included. So what we did was just look to a side-by-side comparison of the scope of work in the original RFP and the revised RFP. There's some semantic, non-substantive changes, but the large change is all of the original objectives, all of the objectives in the revised RFP or RFQ.
All right, Mr. Feldman, you're going to need to put yourself on final approach here.
All right, thank you so much. The 5 objectives that are in the revised are in the original, but 3 have been removed. Long-term case management, community outreach, and awareness building, training, and networking. We can't understand why the city would seek a replacement to PAD that removes all those. Very, very briefly, the process has to be as competitive as is practicable. It would be practicable to invite PAD to participate in the closed request since it performs all of the services within the scope of work. Not inviting them to do so is the antithesis of competitive.
Mr. Feldman, I'm going to have to cut you off.
Thank you so much.
That concludes public comment for today. If it pleases the committee, let's take our communication first so we can get the appointee back to work. That would be 24R4449, resolution by Mr. Winston appointing Mr. Gary Bridgman to serve as the chair of the City of Atlanta Defined Benefit Investment Plan, Benefit Pension Plan Investment Board for a term of 5 years to begin on the date of confirmation and for other purposes. Is the nominee here? Yes. Come on up.
While he's doing that, move to amend to attach the base.
Okay, there's been a motion made and properly seconded to attach the needed base information, so let's open that vote if there's no objections.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
All right, it's now been amended. Welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is
Afternoon.
I'm sorry. My name is Gary. Okay. Oh, thank you. My name is Gary Bridgman. I'm a retired investment professional. I worked for Merrill Lynch for 34 years, and I finished my career with Morgan Stanley the last 6 years. I served as an institutional consultant, working with kind of similar entities like the City of Atlanta's pension plan, so I kind of know that world reasonably well. In my spare time, I'm a philanthropist. I spend a lot of time working on charitable pursuits and really enjoy that. I have a commercial real estate entity as well, and I look forward to the opportunity of serving the city.
Well, thank you very much. We're pleased to have your services. I'll move approval as amended.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wan. If there's nothing else, let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
All right, the ayes have it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Now, we will go to our presentation, which is the Department of Customer Service.
Good afternoon,
Afternoon.
Committee Chair, Councilman Shook, as well as councilman members. My name is Vernon Edmonds. I serve as the Deputy Commissioner for Department of Customer Service, ATL 311. Before we get started, this is my first time, so I want to cue this to make sure I have it correctly. Forgive me. Okay, so that's the advance. Okay, all right. And so on behalf of Commissioner Good, I will be presenting our quarterly readout, which will include the month of October. ATL 311 serves as a virtual front door for the city for all non-emergency services and information. Here we list our core 8 areas of concentration along with the multi-channel access that we provide. We called out in our last presentation that we extended our hours from 7 p.m. to now 12 a.m., offering citizens a greater bandwidth for them to be able to report any issues. On this slide, I want to call out a few operational highlights that existed within the July and October timeframe in which we're talking about. Focusing in on our social media as we try to drive greater adoption, relieving stress from our call center by giving our teams or giving constituents an opportunity to have faster and quicker responses. We survey quite often our interactions, and 93% of our respondents are generally overall satisfied with their experience there. The other thing I want to call out here is that we have, on average, 330 new followers each month that will utilize this alternative channel. One of the other things that we want to call out is our post-call survey. These are surveys that are done for the interactions that happen with our individual agents. And so for our supportive services, who supports some of the most recent initiatives with the Department of Grants and Community Development, Commissioner Lilland, is the housing for people with AIDS, Partners for Home, as well as Housing Help Center. And of that, 83%, which simply means that we have 8 out of 10 people who are very favorable with their experiences with our supportive service teams and will use them in the future to make sure that they report any other housing referrals. The other thing to call out is that we utilize and very present in the community, working with the Department of City Planning, Director Leah LaRue. This particular period, we have attended 109 community events and MPU meetings, which is really aligned with the 50-year celebration that we have this year around our MPU teams. The other thing I want to call out is our training team. As we know in the contact center, it's really important that we provide our teams with the tools necessary to be successful to achieve first call resolution. Our training team recently had a new hire training class that was in September. The next training class is targeted for November 21st, where we're targeting 25 FTE. The other thing to call out to really celebrate is our Director Bartleson, who is over our call center, who is constantly assessing our skills identifying gaps, working with our training team to provide cross-training. That will give us additional capacity. That would also help to reduce the wait times, thus improving the overall customer experience. It is our goal to have everyone fully trained by Q1 2025. That means all agents will be universal. So regardless of the call type they receive, they'll be able to get to the call immediately, thus reducing, again, the wait times. The other thing I want to call out is our call center operations. Our goals is to have 80% of our calls answered in 60 seconds. Our call center has achieved 85% of that during this period. And with the recent bringing online our live agent chat, they're achieving 98% of the service level. The last thing on here I want to draw your attention to is the customer service desk. As many of you guys came in today, you noticed that in the atrium there is a kiosk, and we call AVA. AVA is a digital kiosk that will provide general information to visitors into City Hall. Last quarter, working with the Office of Constituent Service Executive Director Clay, we saw about 1,200 touch points of engagement that occurred during that particular period. This next slide represents our staffing. As we look at it, moving left to right at the top, we have 156 open positions, with about 67% of that filled, which equates to about 105, with 33% of vacancy. As I mentioned on the previous slide, we have plans to onboard 25 additional FTE, which will allow us to make further inroad as we partner with our HR BP to not only recruit, but also retain top talent. Looking at the matrix directly under there, you'll see the performance management where you see people in and out of the system, but what is not highlight that I wanted to draw to your attention is the positive attrition. ATL 311 serves as an entry-level role for many of the employees here in the city of Atlanta. It serves as fertile ground or even bench strength for our other departments because of the way that our teams support the entire portfolio and our services. So we see positive attrition that occurs quite often. And with that, we have also, during that period, unfortunately lost a long-term serving member, which was Andrea Dozier. After 30 years of service here in the city of Atlanta in a variety of different roles, she decided to retire. And she hung up her headset, and we wish her well in the next chapter of her career. This particular slide is a comparison. We're looking at the call volume data exclusively for our call center. We're looking at the same time period for 2023 compared to this year. As I talked about, us driving more self-serve options, pushing more of the adoption, you'll see very clearly that we are making some success there by reducing some of the pressure. As we see, the number of calls that were offered during this period was just a little over 105,000, where we handled 101,000, thus earning or garnering about 86% service level. And again, that means 80% of the calls that are answered in 60 seconds. This particular team is able to do that, get the information effectively, triage it down to the road, and doing that with an average handle time of just under 7 minutes, and with an average wait time of about 46 seconds. This next slide, I'm extremely proud of. Although the numbers look relatively flat, what I want to draw your attention to is the 99% service level that this team achieves. Under the leadership of Director Quarles and her team, they're able to handle any of those interactions. Now, these are the referrals that we talked about earlier, in 5 minutes with 8 seconds hold time. So these guys are able to not only quickly assess the issue, triage it and get it moving, but doing that with a minimum wait time of only 8 seconds. This view I wanted to peel off just a little bit, just to give you a little bit more visibility into what has happened since we've extended our hours from 7 to midnight. And as you can see, month over month, the incremental improvement, that trajectory of where we're seeing volume increase, we know that this will be a slow build as we make the awareness and education more available to our citizens and when they can contact us. But what we're happy to note is with the additional headcount, as we begin to steady state and understand what those arrival patterns, we'll be able to work with the call center as well as our workforce management to optimize our staffing to meet those arrival patterns. But looking at this, things are really looking good as we see it increase. From just September, we saw an increase of 3% positive volume. The next slide talks about the top 5 fulfillment cases by channel. Now, there's a lot of data on here, so I won't go through all of it. I just draw your eyes to the tall poles on the tent. The Department of Watershed really takes the lion's share, where we see water and sewer active accounts being inquired about 11,000. Department of Public Works with trash collection following behind, with us being able to resolve or answer those questions that follows that. With municipal court coming in just under that, with education about failure to appear in the court. Our supportive service with the housing help and shelter referrals that we do. You see that number at about 438. Code enforcement. This is general information, about 1,300 or so calls or cases that were created in this time period. The Department of Finance, that we know that there's some seasonality, but the registration of new businesses that have taken place, which just under 1,500. Atlanta DOT, the potholes, really lead the conversation there, as we are all aware. And finally, the alternate channels, which are, again, chatbot and IVR, as we continue to try to improve our adoption. They're providing some relief to our traditional phone call channel. Let's take a deeper dive and look at some of these fulfillment cases by service levels. These are the timeframes in which fulfillment cases are opened and fulfilled within the agreed upon service level agreement. I'd like to call out at the top of that is our municipal court, which is running about 93%. Closely behind that is our Department of Finance. And with the greatest opportunity we see is ATL DOT, which is about 49%. But what I want to also highlight here is that our team is meeting with them in either a monthly or bi-monthly cadence, many times to talk about the trends, talk about the different things that are going on, because it's our team's desire to provide education at that point of contact as opposed to continuously filling the funnel. So it's really important that we maintain that relationship with each of these departments. The next slide is really about these alternate channels. I'm really proud about our team being able to service constituents in their channels of choice. Let me just quickly draw your eyes to the top channels, and that's email and web. Email and web seems to be the channels of choice for which our constituents and business owners are using most often. And their inquiries are really around, as we saw earlier, Department of Watershed, Parks and Recs, or excuse me, Public Works, and APD. This next slide, to add some context to it, these escalations are escalations that come in from our administration, from our cabinet, other departments, city council, yourselves, as well as those escalations that are coming into our leadership, our Department of Customer Service leadership. There was a jump that we saw, but a lot of that we know was driven by inclement weather during the same time period that our teams have been really working through. But, but again, those are the escalations that are driven from those. This next slide really just echoes what I've been talking about in terms of our efficiency. We've been able to provide quantitative, but this talks about the qualitative experiences that are happening. What it says to us is that from our surveys is that the constituents find our IVR easy to use, the overall experience when they're engaging with our teams to be favorable, our CSRs not only friendly but knowledgeable, and the most important piece is to help us is the likelihood to recommend. So as we looked at that, we also wanted to call out some of the verbatims to the right. And if I could, just call out just a few. The one says, first time using ATL 311. And what a great experience. This makes me feel so connected with our community for its best interests. Thank you all who make ATL 311 happen. And then the final one, a Twitter feed at ATL311 always delivers. All right, so this next slide really looks at our roadmap. Really excited about this particular slide. I want to draw your attention to just 3 of the items that we have currently in flight. As we have worked with, as Commissioner Good has worked with CIO Sankey and AIM to identify issues, remove waste, but also enable solutions to help us overcome and to improve that customer experience. One of the things I'm really excited about that I think aligns with one of the pillars for this administration is a city that's built for the future, and that's our new CRM. Currently, today, full transparency, our current model is very fragmented. It does not allow us the opportunity to see the entire life cycle of an event, thus causing premature closures, escalations many of you have received. With the bringing the new CRM online, this will give us the end-to-end frictionless journey that we seek for our events, being able to have some integrations which will produce or reduce the amount of swiveling that has to occur in that. The other thing is that we want to highlight is that I believe another initiative that ties to one of the other pillars is the City of Opportunity for All, and that's our TTY relay services. This will allow us to reduce barriers for anybody with speech or hearing disabilities to engage with the city to request city services or information. Both of those new solutions will be coming online by the end of this year. And so those are things that we're really excited about. And the final one is more of the geeky side of me, and that's the back office stuff where we get the analytics. This Calabrio will give us the exposure to help us optimize operations, to help us with our forecasting and capacity planning. So those are the 3 things that are on our roadmap that are going to happen before the end of this year. And before I close, I would like to take an opportunity just to recognize. This year we celebrated 10 years of service. And with that 10 years of service, Councilman Shook, I want to call you out and say thank you very much for the presentation. And as well for all of the council members for your partnership, your advocacy, for helping us amplify the message of 311 to help reduce the decisions points for our constituents when engaging. The second I want to call out is our administration. Mayor Dickens, COO Burks, DCOO Ingram, for their leadership and their vision to continue to move Atlanta forward. And finally, before closing with that is our customer experience champions. These are the men and women that come in every day, day in and out, to service on our front line. Sometimes very spirited conversations when they call in. But our team is able to convey ownership and a willingness to help, to transfer that from a detractor to a promoter experience by the end of that interaction. And so for the 10 years of service, I say thank you. But on behalf of Commissioner Good and our entire leadership team, I want to say, look forward to what's next. You haven't seen anything yet. But before with that, I will close and ask any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wan.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a number of questions that I want to, in terms of some of the data that you presented. Starting off with the operational highlights on page 3, the surveys that y'all do are just basically when they come in and report something and then you survey them on their way out, right? I mean, it's not necessarily at completion of the request or the work, correct?
That's absolutely right. That's just the interaction with our agents from the beginning of the phone call to the conclusion of that.
Yeah, I think, and you highlighted this with the new software. I mean, I still have real concerns about what our rates look like in terms of really closing the loop and finishing out the task. Just out of random, I just went and searched my inbox for 311. And most of them are, I put in a 311 call that got closed prematurely, or it's been in, open for 4 months. And so I just need to kind of continue lifting that. And maybe it is a software app solution. But we have to figure out what's going sideways in our system for, and I know these are tend to be the more complicated ones, but from the customer-facing side, they don't care. They don't know. All they know is they've done what we've asked them to, use the portal that we provided to them, and they're expecting a seamless process that is no longer seamless for them. So I'm hoping, you know, I don't know, you've kind of addressed it, but I just want to make sure that you and the commissioner continue to, you know, take that and work on it, because we're not there yet.
Yeah, absolutely, Councilman Juan, you're spot on, and that's something that has been one of the drivers for this new deployment because of the fragmented model. It does give
Yep.
those things, so thank you.
Okay, I want to talk about HR a little bit. So I know that the numbers are a little different from the last report that y'all, quarterly report that y'all gave us. However, I'm a little concerned because the dismissal and resignation numbers last quarter were 6 and 7. So this time it was 11, last time it was 13. And a department that's a little over 100 people, that's a lot. That's something, it almost makes me wonder if there's something going on in terms of why there's that much turnover. And it's not, it doesn't seem to be just a one quarter thing. Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, I'll take a pass at it, and I'll ask our HR partner to come up. But what we have seen is, as I mentioned, what this doesn't highlight is the positive attrition. So we have seen where we have individuals that have moved on to other roles. As I mentioned, we serve as a great bench for other departments because we have the entire portfolio that we're servicing. That has been one of the biggest things, is retaining talent. So working with our HRBP, it has really been a focus for not just recruiting, but making sure that we're retaining. There's been some other external things that you guys are aware of that is looking around salaries with the comp studies. So all of these things collectively will help reduce some of the noise that we have seen in our own department. But I have.
So let me just add,
Okay,
so
I'm
out
sorry.
of the resignation number, which was 7 this quarter and 7 the quarter before, how many of those were transfers or promotions to other departments?
I can get that exact number for you, but it is not only the promotion of positive, but there is performance management that does occur. What I mean by that is that will be some things that certainly people have demonstrated behaviors that are just not aligned with the city. That needs to be addressed, but I can get that, Councilman Juan, to get the delineation of the bucket to see what those actual numbers are.
Okay, page 9, the Department of Transportation SLA percentage, 49%. What can you tell me about that? What are you hearing from the department in terms of why that, or what conversations are going on between y'all and the department in terms of lifting that number?
So I'll look at Director Corals, who manages our portfolio management, but I know quite a bit has been driven by the resources for that department. So that would be the SLA cases, forgive me. There you go. What's driving that low number?
Oh, do you, yeah, on page 9, the SLA for Department of Transportation, its percentage closed within SLA is 49%, which kind of jumps out on this page as being very low. I just didn't know what conversations are being had with ADOT.
So some of the cases we receive, a lot of them are the service date to repair could be beyond 6 months. So
Wow, so you're saying the SLA is 6 months and
We have
we're
some-
still hitting only 49%?
yeah, it all depends on the actual. We don't have the breakdown on here, but we can get you the breakdown of the cases with the SLA to give you the full breakdown.
Well, if I look at the page before and I look at the ADOT section and I look at the breakdown of the cases, I mean, you know, a third of them are potholes. And are you telling me that on average, and even all these that I'm looking at, that even within 6 months, we're only getting half of them? Okay. Well, this, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if we could take that question and do a deeper dive and work alongside with our partners in ADOT to give you more of a exact response. Again, some of these things seem a little anecdotal, but I'd like to take that, if it's okay with you, Councilman Juan, just to understand what some of the challenges that they may be having internally
Yeah,
in their
and
department.
I'm recalling now a conversation where ADOT came and presented to us in transportation, and I remember the commissioner even saying that he wanted to relax the SLAs further because he thought there was an assessment that some of them were not reasonable. And so, okay, this is exactly why we have 311. We have data now to kind of, at least drive and inform that other conversation. So my last question has to do with the escalation cases processed. And you're saying that the 1515, which is now it's about 3 times what it was for the quarter April through June. Granted, this is, I understand, a 4-month period versus a 3-month period, but even the 3-month period non-Hurricane Helene related are still significantly higher. What is that telling you? Like what can we read from that in terms of this jump in escalations, even if you take out October with the storm event?
What it reads to me is education is necessary. A lot of these the escalations, as I mentioned, come from constituents directly through city council. They come through administration. They come through other cabinet or departments. The more that we can educate our constituents on what the expectations are around SLA, using that, since we just spoke about that, I think will help to mitigate some of the questions that come back around that. So the top driver really has been around education. So
are you saying that the escalations are, wow, the way you answer that question almost it sounds like you're saying that the escalations weren't warranted because they didn't understand the SLAs, that they really would have fallen within the SLAs had they understood what they were. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's dual pronged. So the first part of the response is education. The second is to bring that to the attention of those departments so that these don't fall off their radar. So I think it's a dual pronged response, Councilman Juan.
Okay.
Education is certainly a huge component of that. The other is for those things that are valid, we want to make sure that those stay within on the radar of those departments so that they can deploy appropriately and resolve those issues.
Yeah, I guess, especially since it said an escalation is processed if a request is outside of SLA, closed prematurely, or has turned into a hazardous situation. That, to me, kind of transcends the whole conversation about whether the caller understood the SLA periods. I think we need to watch this because I think this also could tell another story about how they're somehow getting dropped, and they're not, the point that I made the very first, they're not getting transferred correctly, they're not getting addressed or assigned to the right department, and then during the, what did you call it, the swiveling, part of the swiveling is causing some of the escalations as well. So again, all very helpful data. I mean, this is why you present it so that we can ask questions and see if we see trends. So I appreciate any follow-up information you can provide me. Thank you.
I've got just a few quick ones. So you mentioned you have a goal of hiring 25 new people.
Sir.
Are you going to employ any particular strategy to try to be more successful at a quicker rate than you've been in the past?
Well, I would say we're probably about 90%, looking at Director Bartleson, who's going to be doing the lion's share of that. We're probably about 90% of all of the offers being extended and accepted. And then
So these are in the pipe?
These are in the pipeline, yeah. This class is starting in about a week or so, Councilman Shook, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I'm curious as to who your department works most closely with over on the mayor's side in terms of establishing expectations and, working through problems and things of that nature. Who do you work most closely with over there?
For staffing needs?
No, for your entire operation in terms of.
Oh, so yes, so we've worked, Commissioner Good and I work very closely with the administration. DCOO Ingram is a huge partner for us. So when we have any of those concerns, also we work across with other departments because it could be some things in which we could solve directly with the transition plans of, onboarding and offboarding those new employees that have recently been transitioned, So it is more of a cocktail. It's not necessarily a linear response, but typically our go-to would be DCO Ingram, who serves as an advocate for us for any of those problems.
Okay, this may sound a little off the wall, but I'm curious. Our office is not infrequently pick up the phone to find ourselves talking to an extremely agitated person on the other end. I have my own rules about what I've directed my staff to do, depending on the language that's being hurled at them. How are y'all trained to handle those calls?
Well, it's the nature of the beast, right? People don't often call us and say you're doing a great job,
Right.
but we have soft skills training that encompass empathy, where we are focused in on the issue and not the personal part of it. And that is an ongoing refresher that the department hosts. We do that with teachbacks. We do that with all kinds of, role modeling. So it's a combination, and we also make sure that we provide a culture that provides space where people can come offline, they can decompress, they can talk to their leaders. Their leaders provide them with weekly, maybe even daily touch points where they have an opportunity to really decompress and talk through some of the things that they may be facing so that they can have kind of a balance, because it can get heavy at times with just having people always, call you for problems. But I think the directors and our leadership team do a phenomenal job, and we've seen that with the recent some of the surveys that we've done internally to help close the loop with some 360 surveys that we've done.
Well, I mean, I'll close with this. You may not get a lot of people calling to tell you what a great job you're doing, but I can tell you that as a council member, I not infrequently have run into constituents who say, hey, I want you to know I called 311 and my problem was, promptly taken care of. So I've really had a great experience. I get really quite a few of those things. Anyone else with any questions or comments? Mr. Winston.
Just want to add to what Councilmember Shook said. I'm frequently a secret shopper to 311. Even yesterday, I called in for something, and the call center employees do a wonderful job. They're very courteous and very knowledgeable. I think we just got to get to the point where we figure out the SLAs on the back end dealing with the departments. And I think, I'm excited to hear about the CRM coming on board, where we'll have more data to be able to dive into this and see what the disconnect is sometimes between what's being relayed from 311 to the different departments. But overall, always a great experience with you all. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you.
Then one final
Yes,
thing,
sir.
if I may.
Yes, sir.
As we're bringing on the new CRM, we're going to reach out to your offices to participate in the user acceptance session next week. So please be on the lookout for that. We would love to make sure that we have your voice captured, as well as some of the things that you'd like to see in that. So just want to make sure you had that on your radar as well.
Thank you, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
All right, colleagues, so you will recall at our last sitting, we heard the audit report on subcontractor utilization for contract compliance. You will recall that there was no one from that office here to respond, and you will also recall that for that reason we held it so as to give them a chance to respond. And is there anyone here today who's prepared to respond to that audit?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. So we're not going to go through the presentation again. We were already walked through it step by step. But
Sounds good.
as per our custom, we do insist on giving you the microphone to respond in the manner of your own choosing.
All right. Good afternoon, Council Chair, committee members. Thank you all. Jason Ingram, Deputy Chief Operating Officer, City of Atlanta. Very proud to come up here and introduce for you our new OCC Director. Our COO should be en route. I think she had planned to be here, but she's also got another calendar commitment, so I wanted to get up here and make sure that I introduced you to our new OCC Director, Ms. Rashawn Spencer, who comes to us from the City of New Orleans. I was very pleased when I saw her resume. She has had multiple experiences in supplier diversity. She has had progressive promotions throughout supplier diversity, coming from intern all the way to director of the office in the City of New Orleans, and has also become the first chief diversity officer of the convention center in New Orleans as well. So she understands the work that needs to be done. She has been She has had personal experience with it. She also, one of the things that I learned today is that when they were standing up the office in New Orleans, they actually reached out to the city of Atlanta for guidance on the office. And so with that, wanted to make sure that I stood before you all today to introduce her. I see now we have our COO. I want to make sure that we weren't held up, but COO, if you have anything. Okay. All right, sounds good. All right. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, DCCOO Ingram. I would like to first identify you all and say thank you so much for having me come with the opportunity to speak before you all. Again, a little nervous, first time speaking before you all, but not new to this information. So let me start by saying I do recognize that this report was devastating for you all to actually have to go through and see an office that has been stood up, as Deputy Ingram said. When I was working at the City of New Orleans, Atlanta was one of the places we visit to understand how to stand up the actual Office of Supply Diversity in the City of New Orleans. So I do know the prestige of having this office, the 50-year anniversary, and all the things that is required to maintain an office like this. But I do come to you with the lens of when I first came on board, I received this audit report as my first assignment within the first week of being here. And I took that report and I looked at it in a sense of three-prong approach. My three prongs were looking at it operational, looking at it technology-based, and also looking at it in the lens of the policy and program that needed to be addressed. I'm not certain at some point are we going to roll the actual presentation, but as it relates to identifying that approach, I looked at the low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit were the operational things, like looking inside of the documentation and making certain that we approached it from a lens of adjusting the forms that were easy lifts from the report, right? And then I looked at the technology side of things. So there are 6 things within the system that I was able to identify that can easily be approached, because the SDMS system, and I'll go to that slide so you all can see. When you think about the system that has been installed and the Office of Contract Compliance is now utilizing, it's the B2 Now system. That system is known around the country to do contract compliance maintenance. This particular system has been in existence for 25 years. It's a cloud-based program, and it specializes in diversity management certification, prevailing wages, labor compliance, and grant management solutions. A part of my background is this particular system I've actually implemented it at the City of New Orleans as well as the Convention Center. So I'm very, very familiar with the system and how it operates. So one of the things when I came on board, the system came on board in 2020. The team in OCC has been working since that time to try to get data input into this system, where when the system initially started, they didn't have a migration that was smooth. It was half of the documents went in, half of the data went in, the other half was left to the discretion of the office to actually implement. So what you're seeing as a result of that is the reporting that's coming out of it now. So we all know data is only as good as the information we put in it, right? So the system cannot operate unless we put accurate data in. So my second approach to this, the 14 recommendation, was to look at the technology. Look at it because I knew quickly I can get in a system that I've worked with for the last 15 years and began to scrub the data, began to implement processes like the tiebacks of the master contracts, the task orders to the master contracts, some of which were inside of the recommendations. So I was not surprised when I saw it when I started to get into the system. I understood what was missing. So I have been actively training the staff to make certain that they are adequate to work the system and also input what's necessary inside of the system. Also having staff adequate enough staff inside of the office to be able to pay attention to every single day someone needs to be in the system. So with that being said, this system is one that you cannot not pay attention to it because audits are going to happen because it's automatic triggers based on primes and subs inputting information. So when I say that, that is four of the actual audit recommendations, and then I move to the policy and programming of things. There are a lot of policy and program that needs to be adjusted to accommodate having this type of system, as well as the partnership inside of the office to move things forward. Not so much as the historical of what we've always done, and I got a lot of that of the culture because I'm from New Orleans, I'm different. So with that being said, as I begin to navigate through some of the policy programming, developing software, developing site visit manuals, I'm faced with a lot of pushback, even internal in the office, because they're used to operating the way in which they do, right? So I want you to be assured that me being in that office, I have a passion for this work. I do it because I choose to. I also do it because I love to serve the people in which we serve. So I love to go and see projects from start to finish, make certain our subs and primes are doing what they're supposed to do. I'm making sure our subs are being paid on time. So that is definitely an initiative and a highlight for me. So at this time, I can take you through individually one by one of the recommendations, or I can answer your questions as it relates to the recommendations if you have not seen my responses.
I think it would be good if you cycled through them individually, as efficiently as you can. And then I'm sure we will all have questions and comments, and probably will have some questions for the auditor as well.
Sounds good. Okay, the first recommendation speaks about having a relationship with making sure the protocol with the compliance officers utilize and have a notice to proceed notification from the internal committee, the internal departments. However, since I've been here, I have put in place a mechanism where we are in the beginning stages of the process. However, as we begin to go through the process, we don't always get notice to proceed. We don't always get awards after they're finalized and executed within the Office of Contract Compliance. And I'm just going to go back to my notes. The second recommendation speaks about making certain that we log contracts. I'm sorry.
Back to the first recommendation. As I read it, it says, we recommend the Director of Office of Contract Compliance work with the Chief Procurement Officer to formalize a communications protocol. And are you saying that we do that?
What I'm saying is I am in the process of building that relationship with the Department of Procurement. What we do is my office is in the beginning processes of the solicitation process, meaning we set the goals, we go to the pre-bids. Now, once it's actually executed, I am not receiving all of the executed contracts, and I am in the process of building relationship with the user agencies for notice to proceed.
Okay. And so that sounds a little different from the beginning, because we want to just make sure we're clear whether or not we agree with the recommendations and that we're accepting them, or we don't agree with the recommendations.
I am accepting
because we already
all.
do them.
Yes.
Okay, so you're saying upfront, you accept all of the recommendations, that we can work on all of that?
Correct. I'm saying upfront, I'm accepting all of the recommendation because there is a clear path to improvement. I do accept the fact that moving forward, there are some recommendations that we have begun to work on and implement and completed, and there are some that still need some work to be done, and I have given a timeline as it relates to the responses on those actual recommendations.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. The second recommendation speaks about contract compliance log contracts in the SDMS system and follow up with user agencies in reference to notice to proceed. That is very similar to the answer I just gave. Notice to proceed is sometime given to us, and we don't get them all the time as it relates to the user agencies. The third recommendation talks about documentation that should be listed in SDMS system and all of the documentation that staff should actually collect, meaning the contracts, letter of recommendations, task orders, change orders, subcontractors, utilization forms. OCC is an ongoing training and process to make sure that that process is in place, that there is a method to obtain all of the documentation that's necessary. And let me start by saying there is some staff that are very new to OCC, and there are some processes that I'm going to have to put in place just to have some order in how we do things consistently across the office. The fourth recommendation, it's established a policy that requires primes and subs to upload documentation showing proof of payment and showing payment amount dates within the 3 business days of payment receipt. The SDMS system actually has a mechanism that actually does that. It has triggers that if a payment is not received according to the prompt payment policy, it's going to trigger the compliance officer that is monitoring it to make certain that they are aware that it's an alarm that you need to do something as it relates to the prime paying the sub.
Go ahead.
So are we saying because the system already does this, that we've been ignoring that alert?
No, I'm saying that they are doing some of them, and I think it's just not consistent across the office. That's why I said I'm willing to accept all of the recommendations so that I can put some clear directives in place, and this is how we're going to move forward. I think in some areas it's being done, in some areas they're not.
Got it. Thanks.
Fifth recommendation, the Director of Contract Compliance add a line to the contractor substitution form. I'm just so trying to get to the, my apologies. Again, it's been a long time since I've had to come before a board or council. But with that being said, the fifth recommendation speaks about the contractor substitution form. Yes, that form did not have a signature line on it so that we can move that process along. I have aligned that with the code. So that was one of the things we did early on. So that has been completed. This recommendation number 6, the Director of Contract Compliance requires staff to update its policy to set minimum numbers of site visit required so that we can perform them and require documentation site visit to upload in the system. I have definitely took a deep dive into this. I'm still not. I'm going to hold it in my hand this time. I have definitely done a deep dive here as it relates. Okay. I've definitely done a deep dive here as it relates to making certain that internal site visits are important, because one of the things I pride myself on is when we award a contract to actually see it to the end. And I'm very passionate about when we put dollars, doing our due diligence, making sure the subs that say that they say it's on a job is the ones that are on a job. So I've come from a place that we did site visits quite often on every project that we had. Now, I do understand Atlanta has a lot more projects, and we're gonna have to really figure out how often we're gonna do it. But I do think that that is something that the deeper dive is. I am probably a little more than halfway through with a site visit manual to make certain that it is clear and concise, that my staff know that we have to have boots on the ground. It's not negotiable. Number 7, we recommend a Director of Contract Compliance to assign staff to manage projects from master contract level rather than task order. That is one of the things that was huge, because when you pull documentation down, the contract was being counted double, and that's because you had task order contracts not tied to the master contract, and that's because nobody's watching the master contract. We're watching the task orders. So that has definitely been aligned. Recommendation number 8, we recommend the Director of Contract Compliance work with the SDMS vendor to implement system features to tie back the master contracts. We've already done that with them, and most of the contracts in the system has been tied back. We are currently working on this current year to make certain that all of those are as well. And keep in mind, the data that's in the system, we're going back for a few years. Recommendation number 9, we recommend the Director of Contract Compliance require compliance specialists to retroactively tie the task orders to active projects, to master contracts. Again, that particular recommendation has been done. All of them has retroactively been tied back. As I mentioned, we are still working on the ones that are current for this 2024 year. Recommendation number 10, we recommend the Director of Office of Contract Compliance work with B2G9 representatives to identify the appropriate diversity participation report in SMS and reflects the office operations. We are consistently working with the vendor. We meet with them probably on a monthly basis now to try to get some customized reporting so that we can easily dump data out of the system as necessary. We did bring on Power BI most recently so that we can have data and have something to present before you all. Recommendation number 11, we recommend the Director of Contract Compliance require staff to update policy procedures and reflect current practices and use the SDMS system and develop a schedule to ensure annual review. We're in the process of updating the policy and procedure, as I mentioned in the beginning. The target of that is December 2024, so I am working through that. So next month, you'll get something as an update. The revision on the policy will be clear and up to date that will guide the staff and promote consistency in the operations. With that being said, the last 2 weeks, I've actually promoted one internal staff member so that I can have a policy and strategy officer, so that her sole job is to look at data and analyze the data and make certain that our data is accurate as it leaves the Office of Contract Compliance. So that's one of the things we have done in the last 30 days. Recommendation number 12, we recommend the Director of Contract Compliance requires staff to conduct thorough review of contract, ensuring goals are met and qualified subcontractors, and investigate abnormalities. OCC will develop a comprehensive guideline for the contract review as of January 2025. These guidelines will establish structural framework covering critical aspects of contract evaluation, alignment of organizational goals, compliance regulatory standards, and adhere to contractual terms. With that being said, I will put something in place that's going to be able to look at the office as a whole and make sure that our policies and procedures are moving forward to actually be very clear and concise on the work that we do to service our constituents. Recommendation number 13, we recommend the Director of Contract Compliance ensure the procedures are developed to indicate steps to be followed when a firm who is contracted and perform work is denied certification and certification is revoked. This is one of the things that we have to formalize a formal procedure for it. It's usually very siloed as it relates to certification and who's revoked, but we are working on it, and the target completion of that policy is January 2025. The policy will have some standards and steps of issuing a notification, gathering and maintaining documentation, and doing some internal compliance checks, just to make certain that when you put a sub on a contract, we know that they're certified and we know it throughout the duration of the contract. And the final recommendation, we recommend the Director of Contract Compliance put a structured quality control system in place to ensure the staffs are following procedures and contract management is consistent among compliance specialists. This is an overarching, I am just finalizing in the next week or so the assessment of the total office. I think I can't get to this quality control until I can assess the office to know exactly what's there. And I am working on that, but this will come to you all probably in the next update in February 2025 as it relates to the quality control. With that being said, that is all 14 recommendations. I am here to answer any question, but I first want to say thank you again for allowing me to come. I want to say, again, this is a program that means a lot to me. I know it means a lot to the people of Atlanta, and I will do my best effort to make certain that it continue to move in a way in which you all will be proud.
All right, thank you. Before I turn it over to others, I've just got really 2 questions and a couple of comments.
Okay.
I want to thank Ms. Burks for being here. She was here 2 weeks ago in a first responder's role. Here's what you need to know, if you haven't already figured it out. When you took this job, you became the guardian
Absolutely.
of Atlanta's foremost policy brand.
Yes.
And we've all seen our share of alarming audits. This one was up there. Now, an optimist would say that's your good fortune because you're new and you've just been handed right off the bat a report card that's going to save you a lot of time you would otherwise spend figuring out where and how to improve. Are you fully staffed? Because in order to implement all this, you're going to need to have, you know, a full complement of people, I assume.
Absolutely. There is some areas for some backfill, and there is some additional things that I have within the assessment. So there will be a need for a few more staff members.
All right, question for Ms. Noble. And I assume you have already seen all this or something similar to it. I'm just curious as to whether you had any response to her response.
Well, I appreciate the response. I didn't see this presentation until now, sitting in the committee. I looked at it on my phone, and then I watched the presentation, but it looks great. I think the
All right,
office is doing a good job trying.
So here's another thing you need to know. They do follow-up audits.
Absolutely.
And so you should, again, an optimist would regard that as a plus for you because you'll get to come in and show us how much improvement's been made. Others with questions or comments?
Yes, please.
Ms. Overstreet.
Yes, so I did. I put my speaker button back on because I literally have a few things written down. And I do agree with Councilmember Shook that you are now the guardian of what I really am so proud of. So I was just
Yes,
shaken
ma'am.
2 weeks ago to find out that I really should be so proud right now. And I definitely want to be proud of the fact that we are supposed to be leading in this model of diversity and inclusion, and making sure that our numbers are having everyone at the table and everyone having a say in the way that we build Atlanta and the way we move our city. And this is so important to me. So I'm glad to meet you today. And I do like your approach to the recommendations, and I'm happy that you've already started on them. I also wrote down, what do you feel is a reasonable amount of time to circle back with maybe a truncated kind of audit? We don't need to take the whole year and a half, I believe they took to do the first one. But I'm sure they didn't know that we had some serious systemic situations happening in our prized, listen, I really want us to get this right.
We
Okay,
will.
and I want us to hurry up and be able to celebrate that. So for that reason, I definitely want to go ahead on and start a new timeline for, and Chair, this is a recommendation for the committee. I want to start a new timeline for a new audit in our diversity program, and, using the same metrics, seeing how we've applied our 14 recommendations. And I want to know if you guys can come up with a timeline that's reasonable where we can recircle back to this.
Me to answer, or?
Well, that's,
Both. So it's you, what do you feel is a reasonable amount of time?
I think 1
And then
year.
A year?
1 year.
Okay. All
And
right.
I have already committed myself to the 1 year.
Okay.
Because back in New Orleans, I've received audits.
Okay.
I'm not unfamiliar with this space, but I've never not met a recommendation where it was, and I've overcome them all. So my commitment to you is 1 year.
Okay. So Ms. Noble, I am requesting a new audit.
Right, to start in a year?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's what I'm asking of the Finance Committee.
well, and I would just suggest we don't necessarily need to wait for Ms. Noble to do another full-blown audit.
Okay.
In order to get, follow-up reports
Okay,
from this function.
okay, so what does that look like for you? Because I'm open to that
Well, I
as
mean,
well.
they're the ones who do the audits, and I know they've got a lot coming up on their plate. And they do follow-up audits, so.
Well, we have a follow-up system where the department enters information into our mission mark about the status, and we do some limited verification. So we will be reporting on the status of these recommendations based on that. To do another truncated audit where we would, pull a sample of contracts and confirm would be a little bit more effort, but we could probably work that into the audit schedule.
So then that would be me requesting that you come before us with those findings as you are working through it. Would that be quarterly, like in the next 4 months, like maybe 3 times?
Yeah, we can include specific information on follow-up audit as part of our quarterly.
Okay. Specific to this diversity recommendation?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
So yes, then that's what I'm requesting then, Chair Shook.
Understood. Thank you.
Again, thank you. Just understanding that we are going to, we're going to get past this. This narrative, it can't stay, like not even close. And so I am looking forward to us getting this right. I am. Again, thank you very much for coming in today. And with that, I guess I yield. Oh, COO
thank
Burks,
you.
do you have anything you'd like to say? I think I feel pretty good about where I am right this moment.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, then. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. White.
Well, first of all, if you haven't had a chance to sit down with her, I highly encourage it. I was lucky enough to be able to get on your calendar yesterday, and high level of confidence based on the conversation we had, the questions I had, understanding your approach, your experience, and just how you see things, because I think that's just as important as the skill set and the experience. It's just your perspective on how you're going to tackle this. So I appreciate everything you do. I think job one, you're doing it. It is how do we clean up from day one so that we know from this point on everything is good. My question now is, as we look back, one of the biggest alarming things that the audit was the discrepancy in the reports from the CCO, well, the annual report and then the numbers that were in the system, SDMS, a factor of almost 100% on each one of them, which is really kind of scary. And then it kind of reared its ugly head this morning in transportation when we got the airport presenting all of its minority contracting numbers. And now there's anxiety from our side going, wait, what do we trust? What do we believe? What do we know? So my question, since you've really addressed well forward-looking, is there going to be an effort to go in and try and scrub the data, or at least give us an 85% level of confidence that new reports, just kind of a resweep through them will be close enough for us to hang our hat on, versus right now it just feels like we can't even do anything with those numbers?
Absolutely. Right now, my team has pretty much shut down to look towards fiscal year 24.
Okay.
So we have cleaned and worked tirelessly, late nights, weekends, and all, to make certain that that data is correct. And I plan to move forward from there. Now, I am going to do little chunks of moving even beyond that backwards. But it's just so many. We're talking about 400,000 lines. It's a lot of data that we would have to work through.
No, I appreciate that, just because, again, you hear our comments about how we are proud of this program and we tout the numbers and we try and amplify the signal on them. But right now we're in pause mode until we get a signal from you that, hey, you've gone in, you've cleaned, you feel good about this interval. And then again, I have a high level of confidence that everything from this point on will be in good shape. But to the extent that you are ready to share those numbers, the clean numbers with us in your next report, I'll look forward to seeing those.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, well, let's close this out by, oh, I'm sorry, you did want to talk. All right.
All right. Not to keep rehashing, but I could not sit and just not come up and close us out real quickly. One, again, want to say thank you to each of you for the patience that you displayed with us a couple of weeks ago when we were not prepared for this presentation. And the presentation you saw today, although our auditor may not have seen it, it's the same recommendations that's in the actual report. We just put it in a presentation format and hopefully to make it easier. But I just want to reiterate, we have kind of broken the recommendations down into 3 spots. The system, what we know. One, we're not using it to its capacity and additional training for our staff. Our communication across departments. And I can tell you, we have already had meetings between contract compliance and procurement to start talking about how we better communicate and what timelines mean for procurement and contract compliance and how they will work together. And the other is some policy changes. But I just want to end by saying each of you were here in January as we celebrated the 50th year of Maynard Jackson's inauguration. And one of the things that we taught a lot is this particular program that he started. It is one that the mayor takes very seriously. And I want you all to know that we are committed to making sure that not only does this program represent the city of Atlanta, but Maynard Jackson and each one of you as well. So I just wanted to make sure that you all know our commitment. And I want to thank the staff in contract compliance. They have been without consistent leadership for a while. Ms. Spencer was one of the first hires the mayor challenged me to do, and even when I became interim. But I do want to commend those who have worked every day without a lot of guidance, without a lot of leadership, but they kept the office going as best as they could. And now having a leadership in place, I feel confident that we would get there. So just wanted to say thank you and just to let you all know that this is one that we're paying very close attention to. We have a few other things in process. We're going to do some listening sessions or what have you, but just know that we are committed to making this office work and continue to be stand out for the city of Atlanta and the U.S. So thank you.
All right,
So
thank
one more
you.
thing, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Silverstein.
In reply to COO Burks, so during transportation today, one of the main things that came out of that is that the Department of Aviation actually measures their diversity program in terms of invoices paid.
Absolutely.
And that's a good, solid way of having some numbers that you can stand on. And I ask that they work closely with OCC and the procurement department. And it really is wrapped up into recommendation number 1. That's why I stopped there, when you first got started, because I think that is so important that we are communicating between departments and that apples are apples and oranges are oranges, and that our numbers that we're scrubbing are the same numbers and we're ending with the same numbers. So I'm glad to hear you reiterate that, because I think that is going to be a nice solid way for us to all be confident in our numbers.
Absolutely.
In the long run.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. 24C5126 is a communication from Ms. Hampton, Chair of the Audit Committee, submitting the performance audit on the Office of Contract Compliance. My motion is to accept and file. Second by Juan. Let's open that vote.
Vote is open. The vote is closed.
All right, thank you.
Cleared the room out.
And now we'll take up our regular agenda. Would you please sound our first read items?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item number 2 is 24O1635, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee waiving Part 2, Chapter 2, Division 4 of the Atlanta City Code to authorize the mayor, his designee, to execute the Third Amendment to Agreement FC 9969 Workers' Compensation Third-Party Administration Services with PMA Management Corp. On behalf of the Department of Finance to extend the term of the agreement effective from December 26, 2024 on a month-to-month basis for a period not to exceed 3 months, and to add funding in an amount not to exceed $157,845.00. All contracted work to be charged to and paid from the fund, department, organization, and account numbers listed herein. And item number 3 is 24-0-1636, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor, his designee, on behalf of the City of Atlanta to execute a lease agreement with American Towers LLC, a Delaware limited liability company for property located at 315 Chester Avenue, Atlanta, Georgia, for the purpose of providing telecommunications services, commencing retroactively May 1st, 2024, and ending on March 31st, 2024, waiving the competitive procurement provisions contained in Article 10, Procurement and Real Estate Code of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances. All revenue should be deposited into the general fund account and center number listed and for other purposes.
All right, thank you. Our regular agenda begins with 24-0-1592. This is an ordinance by Finance Exec to remit payment to the United States Department of the Treasury for unallowed administrative expenses incurred pursuant to the Emergency Rental Assistance Program in an amount not to exceed $650,254.33 from the FDAOs listed here. Move approval. I will second that, but Mr. Deloach, we are going to need to hear a little bit about the phrase unallowed administrative expenses.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jerry Deloach, Chief Risk Officer from the Office of Enterprise Risk Management in the Department of Finance. Previously, in one of our monthly reports, we reported to the committee that we had been in contact with the U.S. Treasury Office regarding unallowed costs for our Emergency Rental Assistance Program. We responded to a number of what we call requests for information. They explained to us that we had overpaid or had unallowed expenses. The amount that we were allowed to pay for administrative costs was 10% of the total amount that the program had been funded for, and we exceeded that amount. We explained to them that in ERA1, the amount allowed was 10%, and we also compared to what they allowed us to have for administrative costs in ER2, which was 15%. And as a result of that, they made a determination that they had to stick to the rules. We were only allowed 10%, and so that's why we have to repay them $650,254.33. We believe that in spite of this unallowed expense, that the program was a success because we committed more than $24 million to paying for rental assistance for residents of the City of Atlanta. And so that's why we're here today, seeking authorization to repay those funds to Treasury.
Thank you. All right, motion's been made and seconded. Does anyone have any other questions? Let's vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
The ayes have it, so ordered. 24-0-15.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deloach. 24-0-1593 is an ordinance by Finance Exec waiving the code section indicated here to authorize the mayor or his designee to execute the Fifth Amendment to the agreement indicated business license and cashier management system with Tyler Technologies, Inc. on behalf of DOF to extend the term of the agreement for a period not to exceed 12 months, to add funding in an amount not to exceed $572,095, to add payment processing services, all contracted work to be charged to and paid from, et cetera. Mr. Davis.
Good afternoon, Councilor Lawrence Davis, Jr., Revenue Chief of the Office of Revenue. We are asking for you to allow us to go into this last agreement with Tyler Technology to allow us to have ample time for our implementation with FAST Tech Enterprise, which has already started, and we are wanting to have the payment processing added due to the fact that Tyler Technology has discontinued the payment gateway processor that we utilize, which is BridgePay, and we are obligated to utilize their system, Tyler Payments, which is the name of their platform. With this, we are on track with a rollout date to go live for the new system on September the 15th of 2025, in which we will be prepared for the alcohol license, which starts in October 1st of 2025, and for the business license in January of 2026.
I'll second that. Questions or comments? Let's open the vote, please.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
Thank you. The ayes have it. 24-0-1594 is an ordinance by Finance Exec to amend the personnel code so as to provide for certain position abolishments creations, reclasses, class creations, and above entry authorizations, employee position transfers, position funding allocation changes, and other personnel actions in line with the 2025 budget and for other purposes. Motion is to hold. Motion's been made and seconded. If there's no questions, let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
All right, the ayes have it. We're going to take 7 and 38, which is a held item, together. 24-0-1610 is an ordinance by Mr. Bond, waiving the code section indicated here to ratify services rendered in connection with the agreement indicated here, annual contract for security guard services with Thorpe Building Services, All-in-One Security Services, a joint venture beginning June 14th of this year, through the execution of the Sixth Amendment, to authorize the mayor or his designee to execute the Sixth Amendment to the agreement on behalf of the Departments of Watershed Management, Public Works, and Transportation, to extend the term of the agreement for a period of up to 8 months, retroactively effective from June 13th of this year to February 13th of next, to add funds to the agreement in an amount not to exceed $5,175,767.30, all funds being charged to and paid from, etc. Item 38. It needs to be amended to attach the iPro report. Let me read that caption. This is 24R4451, an amended resolution by Utilities authorizing the mayor's designee to execute agreements for the RFP indicated here, security guard services with Thorpe and All-in-One, a joint venture, and AUS Atlanta, a joint venture on behalf of Watershed, Parks and Rec, Public Works and Transportation for a term of 3 years with 2 one-year renewal options in amount not to exceed $44,981,822.67, subject to and expressly contingent upon the adoption of the FY26 and FY27 budgets, all contracted work being charged to and paid from, etc. You've received the iPro report, and I will move to amend the iPro report into this legislation. Second by Juan. If there's no questions about that amendment.
One moment, Mr. Chair, we don't need to amend. This was the amendment that was taken in city utility, so it comes before you amend it.
All right, excellent.
Yes, sir.
So I've read the caption of both papers. Does anyone have any questions about either? Mr. Juan.
All right, so we're taking these in tandem, but 24-0-1610 is the only reason we're waiving the procurement code simply because of the retroactivity? Or is there also a concurrent change in scope or increase in dollar amount? It's hard to tell specifically.
Good afternoon. Excuse the voice. I got a little laryngitis going on. Chairman Shook, council members, Sterling Graham, Director of Safety, Security, and Emergency Management with the Department of Watershed Management. My understanding is that's been waived for the retroactivity.
Just the retroactivity?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you. I yield. I'll second your motion if no one else has.
All right, there's a motion made and properly seconded regarding both items. If there's nothing else, let's open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
Have it. Thank you. We will take 8 and 9 together. 24-0-1613 is an ordinance by Mr. Bond authorizing a donation, a total amount not to exceed $1,000 from the Post 1 at Large Carry Forward account to the Action Inc. and Boys to Men and Girls to Win pursuant to the charter section of the city indicated here, and for other purposes. 24-0-1614 is also an ordinance by Mr. Bond authorizing a donation not to exceed $500 from the Post 1 at Large Carry Forward account to the National Alumni Association of Spelman College to support the Gene Foster Scott Scholarship pursuant to the same charter section. Motions to approve both. Second by Juan. If there's nothing else, let's open that vote.
Vote is open. The vote is closed.
24-0-1618 is an ordinance by Mr. Dozier authorizing the CFO to amend the FY25 capital fund budget by adding to anticipations and appropriations remaining bond proceeds an amount of $150,000 from bank balances of accrued interest from the 2015 general obligation public improvement bond issuance to fund art programs and for other purposes. And I know that there's an amendment that's been requested to amend Section 2 to include project and award information. But before we get to that, I have a question and a comment. I guess the comment is the Finance Department's found a new way to fund things. And my question is there a list of the art projects that would be funded by?
So, good afternoon, Councilmember Shook and council members. Monica Perthrow, Deputy Director for the Office of Cultural Affairs. The $150,000 would be used to make required improvements for the West End Performing Arts Center that was recently acquired by the City of Atlanta from Fulton County. And so there have been, will be interior and exterior renovations to the facility, and the facility will be used as a community cultural center.
Questions or comments? Well, I'm going to first.
I want to hear from finance.
Yeah. Okay, finance, Mr. Wan.
Yeah, that's my question is, I mean, this is the second one we've seen in terms of interest from previous bond issuances. So, yeah, is this kind of a new bucket that we all can start going after? Is that, because that's what it feels like.
So, Yolanda Carr, Deputy CFO. So, just wanted to share additional information regarding this. So, as we're going through the process of cleaning up the capital budget, we also had an exercise where we looked at the interest earned in the Renew Atlanta bond funds. We know that there are some funds that are sitting out there. So, what we did is we looked at how much interest had been earned. And so with that, this was one of the projects that came forward for us to make sure that we can use those funds appropriately.
All right, two follow-up questions. One is this in compliance with the bond funding? Is that in compliance with the bond funding requirements?
Yes, we check with the law department before we move forward with this.
Okay, and then, so this, you said this is from Renew Atlanta bond interest.
So we looked at all the bonds that we had outstanding, and so we looked at the older bonds. In this particular instance, this was a bond from 2015 that we looked at. So we wanted to go back and say, okay, since we had funds there were interest that was accrued, and so we wanted to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
So that's how this project came
You
about.
just got a no vote from me on that. I based on the paper that I sent in earlier, I'm not confident we have enough money in 2015 Renew for us to be handing out money to new initiatives right now, and we may have budget overruns that we're going to have to cut projects from the Renew project. Until I get that report that I've asked for, I'm not in a position to support this, how worthy this project may be, but we have an obligation to make good on what we promised the voters 10 years ago before we start, again, continuing to offer up funds for things today. I mean, it's going to be humiliating for me to go back and say, oh, yeah, we used money from the bond issuance interest to pay for this great new cultural center, but I got to cut this project from our Renew Atlanta list. I can't do that.
Sure. And if I can just add additional context, so we're not cutting any projects that have already been allocated. This is really just the accumulation of the interest, but if you need additional information, we'll be happy to provide that to you.
I respect that finance is not cutting it right now, but transportation has not given me a level of confidence saying that all of their budget projections from them, even after the recalibration during the last administration, are sufficient. I mean, the CFO did say that there were accounts or sources, but that's part of the exercise that we're supposed to be conducting now between now and the end of the year. So until such time that I see that, something like this, I gotta say no to, because again, last thing I need is to be able to have to come back and say, yeah, we funded this from that money, but guess what? I gotta take this one out that we promised you 10 years ago.
Sure, thank you. And we will follow up with ADOT as well regarding the list that you requested. Thank you.
You know, here's my comment to that. I agree with all those concerns, but I'll say it like this. I believe, and my expectations are, that to the extent we do run into that crunch, the Finance Department is going to prove themselves to be equally creative to make all those promises whole. I notice we've been joined by our parliamentarian. Were you expecting trouble today, Mr. Conaway?
Well, I have him next to me, so maybe he can come in. So come.
All right, well, so at this point, I'm going to move the amendment which updates Section 2 to include the needed project and award information. And Mr. Juan is not going to second that. So Mr. Winston, oh, Marcy, go ahead.
Actually, I'm going to remove my motion. And because what you're saying is very valid, Councilmember Juan. We were painstakingly cutting that list when looking through our projects from the Renew T-Splosh that from 2015, by the time I got on council, it was 2018. And pretty much nothing had been, well, like a handful had been done. So we had to cut that list. Now, I got downright excited, although the West End is not my district. I still, I live all over Atlanta.
Yes.
So I got excited about the fact that I know we got that property for like, what, $1?
Yes.
Literally. And I would love to see it in usable fashion so that we could, use it. There's so many people that are always asking, can they do things like at the Southwest Art Center that was an unincorporated unincorporated Fulton and now is City of South Fulton, and they have such great programs there, and I use it all the time. And I was looking forward to saying the same about the West End Art Center. So I'm looking forward to actually getting that up and running and renovated and beautiful, and I will be your champion then.
Thank you.
But to use the entrance, which I thought this is a great idea, to start pulling that entrance out, but it would need to go for, I don't know, a trash can on one of our Renew projects or something, because I feel the pain of not having the initial list available to us. I mean, I had to fight to get Cascade Roads phased so that I can actually get Cascade done. So I understand that. So for that reason, I don't know where we're going to go with this.
And if I can just add additional information, I appreciate that.
Sure.
Of course, I'm in the Cascade area as well and do appreciate that. We do have funds that have been earmarked for arts when we issue bonds anyway. So I just wanted to share that. We're not cutting any projects. I just wanted the public to know that we're not cutting any projects. All we're trying to do is find funds that we can utilize, and this was the mechanism for doing that.
And guess what? I do wholeheartedly understand what you're saying, that we're not cutting projects. I need to agree that we need to make that really clear, that we've already cut all of the projects that will be cut. We've already done that work throughout the city, painful. So this really is a little different from actually cutting a project. This is saying your project was cut, and now it's still not going to get done because we are never going to circle back with that extra. Any money that we find is still not going to go towards projects that were supposed to be in each community for the Renew. So I don't know. I can't do it.
Well, I'm not the world's greatest mathematician, but I don't see this moving forward at this point. So the chair will entertain an alternative motion.
I'll make a motion to hold.
Motion to hold's been made and properly seconded. Now, here's what I would say. Let's not waste a good hold. Let's let ATL, this is not the Transportation Committee. However, we need to hear from them. And hopefully the administration will show enough enlightened self-interest to pass that word along to them. Mr. Winston.
Because the 150,000 is still there.
Yep.
So, it's still something that we need.
I just have two questions to that point as we think about the time period that is being held. What is the total amount of interest, or what percentage of that are we using towards this? And then what's the time sensitivity of this?
As far as with the time frame, I would have to defer to Monica to provide additional information, but I will commit to making sure that we follow up with ADOT on the list of projects that you all have asked for. So if we can hold that so that we can have that discussion with them, so that we can make sure we get you everything that you've requested. That will be helpful for us.
Yes,
And
thank you
Monica,
for your
do you want-
consideration. I would say we desire to have this facility up and running by the top of 2025. And there is a great need for the community for access to a venue like this for local artists, community organizations, and so they are excited about this facility coming online in the West End community.
So this is for law. If between now and 2 weeks from now, finance can find a different source of funding, can we just change the caption because the caption does identify this as a source of funding, but can we swap that out?
Good afternoon, Amber A. Robinson, City of Atlanta Department of Law. Yeah, that would be no problem. It doesn't change the intent of the legislation sufficiently such that a substitute couldn't be made just to change the funding source.
I think it's a yes and. Let's get, push on the, understand how much interest is accrued in that, in the Renew Bond Fund. Try and get an update from ADOT in terms of that project list and funding gaps. And then if need be, if it looks like we can't do it this way, then the administration can find another source of funds. Sure. Supportive of the project, but just the funding source.
Understood.
Just a quick thought. The actual West End Art Center actually sits on Phase 2 Cascade. Move Atlanta forward. So, I mean, I'm just saying, let's look into all of that.
Sure, we can do that. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a proper second. If there's nothing else, let's open the vote on the motion to hold.
Vote is open. Will everyone please vote? Vote is closed.
All right, thank you. The ayes have it.
Again, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. 24-0-16-23. I'll make a motion to bring in a substitute. The caption's the same. This is an ordinance by Ms. Overstreet supplementing the restated and amended master bond ordinance in the City of Atlanta adopted on the dates indicated as previously amended and supplemented to provide for the establishment of the 2024 Airport Commercial Paper Program in connection with the issuance by the City of Atlanta of its third lien Airport General Revenue Commercial Paper Notes from time to time in support of the airport's project encumbrance authority and for the purpose of financing on an interim basis in whole or in part the costs of the planning, engineering, designing, acquiring, constructing and equipping certain improvements to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, authorize the issuance by the City of Atlanta of its third lien Airport General Revenue Commercial Paper Notes Series P and Q in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $450 million outstanding at any time, to designate the initial letter of credit providers with regard to the 2024 Airport Commercial Paper Program, to authorize the form of letter of credit and reimbursement agreements and related fee agreements for the repayment of the advances made on the city's behalf in regard to the Series P and Q notes, to designate the initial commercial paper dealers and an issuing and paying agent, to approve forms of an issuing and paying agency agreement, commercial paper dealer agreements, and certain other agreements in connection with the Series P and Q notes, to authorize the preparation, distribution, and use of an offering memorandum in connection with the sale of those notes, to authorize the City of Atlanta general revenue bonds, P and Q, to be issued if and to the extent required to pay the principal of and accrued interest on the Series P and Q bonds at maturity, all to the extent deemed to be in the best interest of the city by the CFO and for other related purposes. My motion is to bring the substitute forward. Second by Juan. Let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
All right, substitutes before us. We getting a presentation?
Good afternoon. Brian Benefiel, Airport Deputy General Manager and Chief Financial Officer. In 2019, we established the Airport Encumbrance Program, which is a $2 billion program that allows us to encumber projects as they move through the process to get to construction. Associated with that was the $950 million commercial paper program. And as we move from 2019 through 2024, our annual capital spend's been in the neighborhood of $400 to $650 million. last year and moving into next year, we're spending over $1 billion a year on capital programs. So now is the time to expand the commercial paper program. This allows us to short-term fund projects as they're being constructed before we go to issue the bonds and put those in the rates and charges. Most of these are rates and charges, airline-related projects.
I'll second that. Questions or comments? Let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
Right, the ayes have it. 24-016-24 is an ordinance by Ms. Overstreet authorizing a donation amount not to exceed blank from the District 11 carry-forward account to Greenbrier Mall to support the 2024 Thanksgiving Carnival and Turkey giveaway pursuant to the section of the charter which is listed here and for other purposes. And I understand we now have the information that we needed to plug in.
Yes, sir, that's correct. It's just the amount of $3,750.00 in the caption in section 1.
I'll second that. Let's open that vote.
Vote is closed.
I'll move to approve as amended. Second by Juan. Let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
All right, the ayes have it. 24-016-25 needs to be substituted. Caption is the same. This is an ordinance by Ms. Overstreet supplementing the restated and amended master bond ordinance adopted on the dates indicated as previously amended and supplemented to provide for the establishment of the 2024 Airport Short-Term Note Program in connection with the issuance from time to time by the city of its third lien Airport General Revenue Short-Term Notes, Series 2024 STN A1, and its third lien Airport General Revenue Short-Term Notes, Series 2024 STN A2, taxable, in the combined aggregate amount not to exceed $100 million U.S., outstanding at any time in support of the airport's ATL Next Plan Encumbrance Authority and for the purpose of financing on an interim basis in whole or in part the costs of the planning, engineering, design, acquisition, construction, and equipage of certain improvements to the airport, to authorize and approve a form of revolving credit agreement and certain other agreements in connection with the 2024 Airport Short-Term Note Program, to authorize City of Atlanta general revenue bonds to be issued as takeout bonds if and to the extent required to pay the principal of and accrued interest on the 2024 short-term notes at maturity, all to the extent deemed to be in the best interest of the city by the CFO and for other related purposes. I'll move to bring the substitute before us. Second by Juan. Let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
And we can also take presentation.
Brian Metafill, Airport Deputy General Manager and Chief Financial Officer. I will not give the long answer this time because it's still part of the short-term borrowing program. It's just a different flavor of short-term borrowing. It's not commercial paper. This one happens to be short-term notes. There's different options from a short-term borrowing perspective that you can do. Historically, from 2019 through today, we've done commercial paper, but since the cost of this program's actually favorable, we're looking at multiple options. So.
Second that. Questions or comments? Seeing none, let's open that vote, please.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
The ayes have it. 24-016-26 is an ordinance by Ms. Overstreet waiving the code section indicated here to authorize the mayor or his designee to execute contracts and sponsors, performers, artists, media outlets, venues, and vendors necessary to effectuate the City of Atlanta's 2025 Atlanta Jazz Festival, and allowing the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs on behalf of the city to charge admission fees for select events at the Jazz Festival, to authorize the city to accept donations for the purpose of supporting the city's actions related to the festival in an amount not to exceed $500,000 through June 30th of next year, authorizing the CFO to amend FY25 trust fund budget in an amount not to exceed $550,000 by transferring funds from the general fund to support the Atlanta Jazz Festival, authorizing that all Jazz Festival contracted work shall be paid from and all revenues and expenses shall be deposited to and expended from the accounts listed and for other purposes.
Good afternoon again.
Afternoon.
Monica Prothrow, Deputy Director, Office of Cultural Affairs. And this paper is to allow the office to enter into agreements for the Atlanta Jazz Festival.
All right, motion by Overstreet, second by Juan. If there's nothing else, let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Just like that, we're at resolutions. 24R4438 is a resolution by Ms. Boone authorizing the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs to administer the municipal support for the arts program as required by the code section indicated here through the provision of donations to eligible tax-exempt organizations and entities in individual amounts not to exceed $75,000 and in a total amount not to exceed $2 million for FY25 in accordance with the section of the charter listed here, authorizing the mayor or the executive director of the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs as the mayor's designee to execute donation agreements with eligible tax-exempt organizations and entities necessary for the administration of municipal support for the arts program for FY25 on behalf of the city, to authorize the CFO to charge to and pay the donations authorized hereby from the accounts listed herein and for other purposes.
Hi, Monica Prothrow, Deputy Director, Office of Cultural Affairs. So we have received 106 applications from nonprofit arts and community organizations for general operating support or project support for activities that will go through the end of the fiscal year.
Questions, comments? I'll move approval. Second by Winston. Nothing else, let's open the vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
Let's have it. 24R4439. Requires a substitute, correct, and then we're holding it.
No, sir, we will actually hold it today.
Just hold it as is.
Yes, sir.
Fine. It's a resolution by Councilmember Boone authorizing the mayor's designee to execute a contractual agreement for the sole source with MetLife for the purpose of providing PTSD coverage for first responders, crime technicians, and E911. This annual contract shall be funded in an amount not to exceed $469,612 annually. All contracted benefits will be charged to and paid from the sources indicated. Motions to hold. Second by Juan. Let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
You guys have it. 24R4446, a resolution by Shook providing for the call of a public meeting of the City Council of City of Atlanta for consideration of certain ordinances which, if adopted and approved, will authorize the city to issue in a not to exceed amount of $4 million in aggregate principal amount of various purpose general obligation bonds, the publication of a notice to the general public and a call and holding of such meeting and for other purposes. And we need to amend this by updating information in the resolve clause. So I'll move that amendment. Second by Juan. Let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
Questions about the paper as amended? I'll second that. Motions to approve as amended. If there's nothing else, let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
Guys have it. 24R4506 is a resolution by Finance Exec authorizing the mayor to exercise the first renewal option for the SP indicated Comcast Network Fiber Services with Comcast Business Communications LLC on behalf of AIM and Watershed for a term of 1 year effective January 26th of next year through January 25th of 2026 in an amount not to exceed $346,147.36. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from, etc.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. TJ Ferguson, IT Director Operations with AIM under the direction of Jason Sankey, CIO. This is simply because we have multiple projects where we utilize Comcast Business Services, and we have several others that we would like to enter into with them and make sure that we can provide all of the types of services for things like SCADA, the Centers for Hope, and those different locations that we have this, as well as looking at using them for secondary circuits in some of our locations to make sure that we maintain good uptime.
I'll second that. Questions or comments? Seeing none, let's open that vote.
Vote is open.
The ayes have it, so ordered. 24R4507 is a resolution by Finance Exec authorizing the mayor to execute the following agreements for the RFPs indicated: wireless mobility services with AT&T Enterprises, T-Mobile USA, and Verizon Wireless Services on behalf of AIM for a term of 2 years with 3 one-year renewal options in an amount not to exceed blank. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the sources indicated, and we're holding this, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'll second that. I will note, in case you haven't read it, there are 10 observations, which is a lot. To my eyes, none of them, or no 1 or 2 of them, are fatal, but it's a lot of observations, and it's a lot of sort of recurring problems. And we've heard from the CPO, and we are aware of his efforts to clean those problems up. So we have a motion and a second on the amendments. Let's carry that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
All right, motion to hold. Second by Juan. Let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
The ayes have it. 24R4508. It's a resolution by Finance Exec authorizing the mayor to execute agreement for the RFP indicated citywide preventative maintenance program for HVAC services with Aris MEP Inc. on behalf of Enterprise Asset Management, APD, Department of Transportation, Department of Corrections, also Parks and Rec, and Public Works, and Watershed, for a total amount not to exceed $3,097,132.60 for a term of 3 years with 2 one-year renewal options. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the sources indicated, and the iPro comes with this. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, members of the council. My name is Chris Davis, Commissioner for the Department of Enterprise Asset Management. The purpose of this legislation is for us to enter into a new agreement with Aris MEP Inc. for our HVAC on-call services.
All right, any questions or comments? I'll move approval. Second by Mr. Juan. Let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
All right, the ayes have it. 24R4509 is a resolution by Finance Exec authorizing the mayor to execute special procurement agreement with blank on behalf of the Department of Finance pursuant to the code section indicated here for initial term of blank with blank renewal options in amount not to exceed blank. All contracted work to be charged to and paid from. So I take it we're holding this. That'll be my motion. Second by Juan. Let's carry that vote.
The vote is open. Vote is closed.
24R4510 is a resolution by Finance Exec authorizing the mayor to issue task order number 8 for the contract RFP indicated. This is citywide architectural planning, design, engineering, and construction phase services with Harris Smith LLC for Atlanta Fire Rescue Modular Classroom Design Services on behalf of DEEM in an amount not to exceed $31,000. All work to be charged to and paid from the accounts listed and for other purposes. And I will second that. If there's nothing else, let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
All right, held papers. Let's go to 26, which is going to be up for filing. It's a duplicate. 24O1013 is an ordinance by Community Development Human Services, authorizing the mayor to reinstate retroactively to December 19th, 2022, an MOU between the city and Buckhead Baseball with respect to the operation and maintenance of the baseball fields at Bagley Park, formerly known as Frankie Allen Park, for recreational baseball programs, to exercise a 5-year renewal option under the MOU commencing December 20 of 2022 through December 19 of 2027, to waive all ordinances and resolutions in conflict herewith, to permit the reinstatement of the MOU, to ratify actions taken by or on behalf of the city since the date of expiration and for other purposes. Motions to file.
Second.
Second by Juan. Let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
And items filed, we can take 35, and 36. Each needs a substitute. 24R 4313 is a resolution. I got to find that. Thank you. Resolution by Shook, substituted by Finance Exec, authorizing CFO to refund a customer for overpayment to their water and sewer account in the amount of $16,060.86. All funds to be charged to and paid from the sources indicated. Motion to bring the substitute forward. Second by Juan. Let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
Move to approve on substitute. Second by Juan. Let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
Thank you. The ayes have it. 24R 4314 needs a substitute. The caption reads, resolution by Shook, substitute by Finance Exec, authorizing the Commissioner of DWM to adjust water sewer service charges on certain customer accounts in accordance with the City of Atlanta Code section indicated in the amount of $14,942.42 and for other purposes. Motion to bring the substitute forward. Second by Juan. Let's open that vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
Motion to approve on substitute. Second. Was that you? Yes. Second by Juan. That's just something else. Let's open the vote.
Vote is open. Vote is closed.
Do we have any other business to take up today? Anyone have any announcements? We are adjourned.